So it's been a while since I last made a video on this channel. There's a reason for that. Probably multiple, actually. Well, for one, I started out this channel, actually in a different incarnation back in 2018 or so. Yeah, 2018. And I was like doing vlogs of my music and myself as a whole as an artist and trying to get into different scenes and building myself in that way. I was also fairly young as a trans woman. I was 21 or so, and I was new to transitioning, and I wasn't 6 years in like now. So I felt I'd document it. I deleted that channel in 2019 or so, and then I started a new one some months later. And the material on this channel actually is all from that time onward. But I largely stopped, I think, because I grew self-conscious of myself for the channel and became sort of estranged from the concept of being able to just confidently deliver a video authentically and earnestly out of my own words and ideas. And what can I say? My life grew a bit complicated with school and mental health issues and the art stuff not taking off as I like. I still consider myself very talented, but I understand that the voice stuff is a bit of an issue, and I'm still looking to remedy it to consistency. So there is that. Wouldn't you know, my voice actually dropped a bit after I had COVID during May, and it was quite the experience, as it is for most people. At very least, if they're aware of even having it. It's a roulette. But yeah, I mean, I think that the image I was presenting, or even consciousness of having an image to begin with, was much more present in me years back than it is now. I'm almost 26 years old, and the naivete and self-centeredness and conceit of wanting to build something big out of yourself back then is not the same as it is after you've lived a few years out of the educational system and in the real world, so to speak. So it becomes kind of difficult to just bring yourself to do that again, or continuously. You got to stop at some point, or at least take a step back. So my mission statement is a bit different now from how it was years back. So that's a big part of why I left the channel for a bit. Plus, the channel wasn't building into much. I mean, it's at 138 subscribers right now. I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone who's subscribed and who's watching the videos, but it could be more than that, So I get it. But this video, actually, I actually made it back on Tuesday initially, and I scrapped that take of it because I was speaking way too damn slowly and way too damn deliberately, and I wasn't fond of it, so I decided to do it again. So this video is actually about Dylan Mulvaney, the trans TikToker that's gained traction throughout this year and gained a lot of controversy and a lot of adulation just the same. So I'm going to make a video on this. Oh, some guy just complimented me just now, actually. That was really sweet. But anyway. Oh, also, it's 74 degrees out today, and it's or something like that, and it's November 4th. It's kind of crazy. We all know why it's happening. We'll see what we'll deal with it, how we'll deal with it in the future, but for now, it's a bit wary, kind of leery-inducing, Leery-inducing. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but I like it. But yes, I'm a bit leery of things in multiple ways right now. I think a lot of us are. Anyway, Dylan Mulvaney. So Dylan Mulvaney is a 25-year-old trans TikToker on TikTok, and she posts a lot of videos in her series called Days of Girlhood, which she started on what seems to be days before her HRT, hormonal transition, and she has been documenting her transition ever since. She started this in early 2022 or maybe late 2021, and she's gained 8.5 million followers on TikTok and hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. And she's also gained the attention of a lot of different commentators and different YouTubers and different people of varying walks of life and varying walks of ideology. And it becomes a bit of a controversy for her because, let's ask what she's doing. What she's doing is inherently awkward, to start. There is no one who has actually done this before, where they are documenting their transition from male to female or female to male day by day, especially male to female, which is very awkward because male has angular features, female has soft features. How do you integrate that, But just simply put, and it's not always pretty, as much as you might want to doll it up. So I mean, I get where a lot of people have discomfort with it, but I think they don't realize that when they have that discomfort, that it's not supposed to look that at ease at first, you know. But right now in the news, there's this, there was actually Caitlyn Jenner who discussed her disgustedly because she saw that she determined it was absurdity what Dylan Mulvaney was doing. It's kind of funny, actually. Because Dylan Mulvaney was doing something that is unspeakable for some people. You know, that she was talking about her crotch. She's talking about her crotch being too tight in bicycle shorts at the beginning of her transition when she was going to like the mall or something, and she was wearing these really tight bicycle shorts, and people were growing uncomfortable, and she discerned that it was because her crotch was visible through the shorts. And she's, you know, claiming to be experiencing herself as a girl, you know, and as a woman, whatever you want to call it. By the way, plenty of cis females or females who are of age, you know, do discuss themselves as girls. Even guys discuss themselves as boys. You know, it's not unheard of. So I think this talk about girl being, you know, a terrible term for or a profane term for someone that old to be using. 25, by the way, is not that old. It's young. It's a young woman, young person, you know. It's just inane. It's just a means of defeating her. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. One moment. For me, not for you. Yes, crotchgate. Basically, Caitlyn Jenner's stance is that you can't be doing that. Trans or not, you shouldn't be doing that because it undermines womanhood and degrades it, and degrades being trans. And it's absurdity because it's indecent, in other words. Now, granted, I could see where that is, but I also see it as, you know, a lot of people have tight-fitting clothing on, cis or trans, male or female, and sometimes it develops a bit of camel toe, you know, whether we're talking about the female persuasion or the male persuasion, which I know doesn't really exist, but we're going to call it that anyway. It was a mistake. It was something that you probably wouldn't do again. But you know what? Like, it's okay because this is like an awkward phase. And people don't get that. It's more awkward than regular puberty, I would say, because like you're changing sex roles. And like that is so hard, you know? And it's something you want to do, obviously, but it's not easy to, and you will do it, but it's hard to get through. Even if you will invariably do it in your own way, it's hard to get through. You have to find your own footing, and it takes a long time. You're changing your wardrobe, you're changing your body, you're changing your voice, you're changing everything about yourself, while still somehow paradoxically retaining yourself within it. You know, it's like, it's a mind screw, okay? So people don't recognize the beauty of that, of the mind screw. And I pity them, those who don't, because it's really such a process to witness. And I've witnessed it, and people have witnessed it of me, and it's like, you know, it's a metamorphosis, and it's really beautiful. And I wish people would not be down on Dylan, because guess what? Dylan is just living out her authentic self. And I've seen it also because I've seen details of it. I've watched Sloth Queen's video and like her parodying Dylan's struggle, you know, and I've seen, you know, Matt Walsh's videos, and I've seen Michael Knowles' videos telling her that she needs prayer or something. I am talking a bit fast now. I'm kind of overcompensating, but I digress. And I've seen Blair White's video, and I have a friend who's also discussed Blair White's video alongside discussing Dylan Mulvaney, and she is a YouTuber actually on YouTube, and she's been on YouTube since like 2010 or so, transitioned slightly earlier than that, and she goes by Fiora West Coast on YouTube, Fiora West Coast. Her name is Jacqueline, and she discussed on her community page that she thinks Blair White is kind of creating this like charade through herself, because like she is trying to compensate for her transness by being appealing to conservatives. And then Dylan Mulvaney doesn't know who she is because she's trying to, you know, be this hyper feminine self when she's just, you know, a trans woman who is trying to find her own footing. And I can see where that comes from, but also like, nevertheless, I've watched all these people. I've watched the Ulta Beauty interview with Dylan Mulvaney. I've watched most of it, and it's like, and honestly, that Ulta Beauty interview, I feel like a lot of people didn't give it a chance, because honestly, like, watching it, I just felt like there was a lot of earnestness in it, a lot of earnestness about like gender roles and about the intersection of being trans or gender variant and being an actor, and being I'm going to get roles and gigs as an actor or an artist even, and being new to all of this stuff, being new to the sex role that she's entering or a gender role that she's entering, if you like that term more. This is so chaotic right now. I want to address that, by the way, sex role and gender role. Like, sex and gender are related. They are inextricably related, and people on all sides of the aisle make it out to be as though they're separate things, as though one is shallow and one is deep. And it's unhelpful, because gender, I feel, is such a central relationship to your body as male or female or androgynous. And I feel like, the extensions of that are the clothing, the behavior, all that stuff, and the society and how it relates to you. But I think at centrality, it's about your body, and you're relating to yourself as a sexual being. So honestly, I think it's kind of fluff to say that it's anything less than that. I think Dylan's going through the same thing, going through experiencing herself as a feminine entity. And I feel like it's so reductive to suggest that you can't experience, or reductionist to suggest that you can't experience that as a male-bodied individual, when there is a spectrality of bodies and of behaviors and all that stuff. People do experience. Let me do another take. Hold on. It's hard to talk about this in a park. I'm in a park, Like, everyone, take it this way. Everyone has estrogen and testosterone flooding their bodies, okay? Where does that come from? That comes from the fact that we both have mother and father. It comes from the fact that we all have X chromosomes, and some of us have Y chromosomes. Some of us have only X chromosomes and no Y chromosome. But all of us have X chromosomes as at least one sex chromosome, so we have that commonality. We all have testosterone and estrogen, and we all have mothers and fathers, and we all have aspects in common as people beyond just being male or female. And I think it makes sense that there'd be a means to fluidity, and it's evident in people being around. From what I've seen of people and what I've seen of myself, it's just evident. So I think it's just reductionist to say anything otherwise. And we didn't have this problem of being so reactionary against trans people 10 years ago. We just accepted that it was something that happened every while. I do agree that, like, it's kind of inflated now. The amount of people they're claiming themselves as trans is kind of inflated, but they also in a way have a right to claim themselves as trans. Like, who am I to say they're not? But at the same time, yes, I do agree that there's some sort of social contagion in some sort of way. Yes, I'll agree with that. There are detransitioners, and they need a voice. And there are people who are claiming the non-binary tag as just a vanity of, like, being transcendent or separate from this whole gender game. And there's some people who wouldn't have transitioned if not for the inclination or influence to do so. Before this next part, I needed to add this in. I want to note plainly also that there are a lot of characteristics that are androgynous to one sex or the other that are present in both sexes, like a strong jawline, breast tissue, thick thighs, nice glutes, a strong abdomen complete with maybe an Adonis belt, muscles, like, all of these things are found throughout the sexes, and yet we can easily type them as either decidedly masculine or feminine. It all does occur throughout the sexes. Even though we can identify what is masculine and feminine, what is male and female, that doesn't preclude the fact that it does bleed through both sexes, or all sexes, Both. Yes, there is male and female, decidedly. There's also intersexuality, there's also homosexuality, there's also transsexuality. So, there you go. And of course, how could we forget? High tenors and contraltos. And even mezzos. We'll throw those in there too. Like, androgyny is all around. Yeah, I felt that that whole part was kind of unusable, because I was kind of dragging as far as the content, as far as what I was trying to say. But basically, what I was trying to say was that there are so many minutiae of androgyny and femininity and masculinity in people's bodies, people's ways about themselves, stoic versus flamboyant, and aggressive versus delicate or gentle, all these things. It's like there's so much that can just overlap between the sexes, and that represent the sexes too. And so when we can recognize that, it's pretty hard not to deny that there are going to be some who dissent against their sex role as given, you know, whether it be based on, their sexuality, wanting to date the same sex rather than the opposite sex, or whether it be their being their gender expression, wanting to wear clothes that are crossed to, or even take part in activities that are crossed to their sex as expected, or they fully full on just want to identify themselves differently. It's not that hard to grasp. And the fact that there are intersex people too, it makes sense as well. We recognize there's homosexuality, intersexuality, and transsexuality with the itties at the end. It makes a lot of sense. So that's what I was trying to say. And I think it makes more sense now. I'm saying it now than the 3-minute rant I gave while panting in the forest. So yes, thank you. And yeah, I find it hard to unpack at times because I do have sympathy for the other side of this equation, of this argument. And I myself am personally invested in, this argument as well, regardless of what side I sit on. It does affect me. But I really do think that Dylan is a force for good, and that people documenting their transitions and documenting their trans identity and being outspoken about that are a force for good. Yes, there is some aspect that is like kind of trend-like. I'll admit that, but like in the end, it's about expressing oneself freely in a way that's not tethered to sex in one way or another. And that's what queer identity is about as a whole. That's why it's kind of obstinate and ignorant to think that like, the trans label should be separate from LGB, because like it's quite evident that like these things relate when you unpack all that. So I think with Dylan Mulvaney, new take. Hold on. With Dylan Mulvaney, well, actually, let me get to talk about this parodic video that actually brought me to, or set of videos actually that brought me to talk about this in the first place on here. Because at first I was actually kind of in concordance with her ideas on things. Sloth Queen's videos on Dylan Mulvaney. I did have some sympathy for what she was doing, and I perhaps still do. But like, yeah, and what she's doing, Sloth Queen is basically this small YouTuber and TikToker, or former TikToker, who made a couple videos bashing Dylan for her Days of Girlhood videos, and talking about how she parodying her, drawing attention to her girl bulge or whatever, her penis, and like her very high femme sort of fashion and ways about herself, and she was drawing attention to all that, and kind of had this just very uncanny and very angular looking makeup on, to kind of position the point that like, oh, he's a man, and she had like this beard drawn and stuff and all that stuff. It just looked really depressing. Actually not depressing, striking actually, it really did. But like, I just ask, what is the point beyond asking this person to repress herself or themselves? Is it you're looking for trans representation to be legitimized? If so, let's talk about that. But also, let's not ignore the fact that early transition looks like this. It can be exaggeratively feminine or masculine. It can be very awkward looking in terms of physique in contrast to the things that they're wearing. It can be a sort of point of like unsureness or authenticity or even performativeness, because they're trying to figure out who they are in a new sort of way. that's very different from the way that they were able to live beforehand. Why do they do this? Because they like to. That's the simplest way of putting it. But nonetheless, they have a right to. And I don't think Dylan is looking to appropriate the tag of woman. I think she's just living in a very fragile femininity right now. They'll grow and blossom to be less fragile over time because she's transitioning to female. Okay? Like, it's not that simple. And then Blair White's video on Dylan Mulvaney, which I recall called her a failed actor and someone who kind of implied that she's just sort of some creep and self-centered person. She did mention that she does believe that she is sincerely transgender, which Sloth Queen actually suggested, or actually insisted that she isn't, that Dylan Mulvaney is actually not trans somehow, which is kind of weird, as though she was faking the whole thing. She was kind of insinuating the whole time that she was faking the whole thing, which is unsubstantiated, let's say. And then Blair White, on the other hand, was saying that she was real about it, but was, doing things that just draw attention cringily to herself, which fair. But then again, I think the whole point of it is to dig deep into what a transition can look like, so I don't think that that's helpful. I don't think Blair White deserves all that much shame, but she does sort of deserve at least a little slap on the wrist for suggesting that she's not, or was not at some point, similar, in that there was an awkward stage where she had to become passively female, versus what she initially was, which was, a high femme gay boy. I've seen pictures and videos of her before she transitioned, I've seen them. And, there's similarity. Not completely, but there's a basis for comparison. So I think you should keep that in mind. Same with Caitlyn Jenner, who, granted, was never a gay guy, but, she was, this, supposedly hyper-mask decathlon runner, who was married to Kris Jenner and had begotten, more than 4 children, and, could be perceived as having a somewhat high voice, but overall masculine, She's a lesbian from what I can tell, though, so it makes sense that she has some masculinity to her more so. And people don't take that into account, that, women can be masculine too, so why not trans women, nevertheless. It reeks of what Caitlyn Jenner was doing by saying, he's showing his penis, he's talking about his penis. It's absurdity. You're talking about a lot of stuff. It just reeks of, self-consciousness, I guess. Now, granted, I guess it also reeks of, being from a different generation where, some dignity, was valued. But, I think the transparency is useful. I really do. So I don't think that she deserves all that shame for that, to be honest. I think Caitlyn Jenner should be watchful of her words. And, I'd ask her to question where it comes from. And, would I like to have a talk with her? Yeah, probably. Possibly to get my name out, but nonetheless, be interesting. Anyway, but let's recount the fact that she's less than a year in. Dylan Mulvaney has not had any surgeries. She's barely been on hormones for more than 6 or 7 months, and was taking them the wrong way for a while. She's supposed to take them sublingually, otherwise it's not as effective, and the body will probably digest them in a large extent. People don't know that, but that's true. And she's just exploring herself, and she's looking prettier every day, in my opinion. So it's if you look at the first video she did, she's all bearded and stuff, and her face even looks different, versus now. And it's not even been a year yet. Give it time, give it grace, give it faith, oh my. But I think she deserves some clemency, some grace and faith. I think she deserves that. I don't think she's a bad person. I don't think she's misguided. I think she's a little risky in her doing this socially. Societally, this is a big step to make. But the vanguards usually are a bit risky, so, or at least often are. And I think it's a force for good. I really do. So, I mean, power on to her. Girl power. I think so. So, I guess that's the extent of what I want to say about Dylan Mulvaney. And I'll see what else I want to say later on. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you need. Even comment. Take care. Oh yeah, also, let me just say this. Yes, I believe it's aberrant for a woman to have a penis. It's not really something that happens, generally speaking, unless you're trans, in which case it fundamentally brings caution to the idea that you even are a woman. That's the whole point, you know? Like, prove yourself, yeah. But, like, she's trans, so we get this. You know, I don't know if we need to normalize the bulge, like Dylan is saying, but, like, let's acknowledge that the bulge can be there. It's the truth. It's a primary sex characteristic. Of course, it has, you know, an inherent maleness about itself. And so does a vagina have an inherent femaleness about itself. Okay? But, like, there are trans people, and why should we just obstinately ignore that just for the sake of appeasing our own ideas about gender and sex? It's not helpful. It's not the full truth. We should be appeasing the truth, not certain ideas about it. So that's what I have to say about that. Anyway, thanks, Jordan Peterson.